Welcome back to Volume West from Home. Davey Havok and I are now very excited to welcome to the show RuPaul's Drag Race superstar, Broadway superstar, activist, singer, songwriter, star of stage and screen, now joining us via Zoom on screen.
And Stunner. We see her on screen.
It's Peppermint. You do look fabulous.
I gotta say, listeners, Peppermint is doing her face. She's all done up. She's getting ready. No one sees her.
No, we're recording video of this.
Oh, we are?
Yeah.
Well, then I have to go.
You better be.
Excuse me. I have to go fix myself. I wasn't told.
You look fine. But
look
yes,
like I came out of a cave, but this isn't about me. Peppermint, thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much. So you have a new album that we're going to talk about, it just dropped on Friday. It's called A Girl Like Me, Letters to My Lovers. And there's a lot to process, a lot to talk about there. It's part of a trilogy. So I want to get into what we can expect from parts 2 and 3. But I'm just going to cut to the chase and, I'm going to put Davey on the spot a bit. You and Davey have something in common.
Oh,
Oh no, what is it?
No, so you originated a role on Broadway, Head Over Heels, the Go-Go's musical. Davey auditioned for that role, but you got the role instead.
You auditioned for the role of Pythio?
Yes, I did, Miss Peppermint.
Oh my God, darling.
Yes, and had I known you were auditioning, I wouldn't have bothered flying to New York.
Darling, stay home.
Exactly.
Was it at the Shakespeare Oregon Shakespeare Festival, or was it for on the Broadway run?
It was for the Broadway run.
Do you live in New York?
No, I flew to New York. I flew to New York to audition. So I imagine you're friends with Donovan, or were you acquainted with Donovan?
I know. Well, I mean, obviously he was my producer. So
Right.
We were not acquainted prior to. I met him at the audition.
Okay, so I had known Donovan from Los Angeles and his involvement in everything in Los Angeles, and I performed with him before. And I ran into him, I think, at an Adam and the Ants show, and he was telling me he was doing this Go-Go's music. Oh yeah, okay. So do you like Adam and the Ants?
Wait a minute, but is that like Adam Ant, but like Adam and the Ant?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was Adam Ant, actually. You are correct. He didn't have his ants, I don't believe.
His ants are a thing of the past.
And he told me about the show. The show sounded fabulous. He told me it wasn't Jukebox, which listeners, you may or may not know, it's not. It's really the story of Arcadia, essentially, which is beautiful. And so I punished him into getting me an audition for the show. Because
you were outclassed.
And I really was. So I flew, and I felt I had done pretty well, that it was possible. The dancing moments. Did you have to dance? Unfortunately, I didn't get to see the show, Miss Peppermint. But did you have to dance?
There were some dancing moments. I think the show morphed over time, probably from what you had to audition. Because generally, like in a call, most people know you're going to sing, you're going to dance, you're going to read your sides, and then everything just goes out the window. And so by the time I incorporated, none of that probably was in the audition. But I don't really know. You would know. You would tell us. But my auditions were all. I was in another country. I couldn't fly in, and so I was on tour, doing a RuPaul's Drag Race tour in the UK and in Europe. So I was auditioning. It was grueling because I would do my show, and then at night I would get to the hotel room and then take a shower. My assistant and I would sit up. We would read the sides, record me doing the thing, and then send it off so that they would see it in the morning. Then they would send me feedback or something, and I would like go through the callback process that way.
Wow.
Which
so
was
you
had
to get off book while you were already performing.
Oh yeah, and it was
yeah.
That's what it was.
yeah. Because listeners, let me tell you, the sides were extensive, and at least when I got my sides, they said learn the whole role. It wasn't until I arrived at the audition that they just had me learn. Yeah, They gave me the sides.
So I did the entire thing.
Wow. Did you? So let me ask you this, because there's when I auditioned for the show, there were different roles that were required of Pythio. One of which was the owl, which I thought was very delightful. Did you also do the owl?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I did the owl, I did the snake.
Yes, love the snake.
Same.
And
Come
then,
on,
of
man,
course,
out with it. What are you, a man, a woman? Woman,
Oh, is
out
this
with
a
it. We're all
table
adults.
table read? We're doing a table read now.
That's another character. I know the other character's lines too.
And then there was the mother,
Yep.
and whose name was Linda. Probably in the version you read, her name was Linda, but then they changed. I don't remember what the hell they changed her name to.
Wow.
They did it on Broadway. I don't remember. Yeah, there was several iterations or several incarnations of Pythio.
And you were the first Pythio, correct?
I was the first, well, not the first ever. Pythio did exist because, I mean, a little history. If you talk, I don't know how much Donovan may have told you about the inception of the piece, but when it was at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, Pythio didn't exist. It was Philanaxis, who was the kind of court jester, and that was who, and was also the narrator. And so, long story short, they had this jester that I guess ended up not being the kind of character that they wanted on Broadway. So I think as a part of some of their notes in order to bring the show to Broadway, they needed to fine tune. I think the Oregon Shakespeare Festival show was like 3 or 4 hours long. Wow. And so obviously they had to cut a bunch of stuff out. So when they revised it for Broadway, they created the role of Pythio. They took Philanaxis and split that character into two. And part of the character was Mopsa, who was played by Taylor Iman Jones on Broadway, and then the role of Pythio. So they kind of took one character and split them into two. And that's probably what you read, is obviously the Pythio role. And the, when I initially auditioned for it, it was just like a completely different role. And we put a lot of my isms into it. But there was, at some point, I think when they were workshopping to go to Broadway, Pythio was played by a few people, I think.
So did you not workshop? Did you workshop in San Francisco? Did you?
We didn't workshop in San Francisco. We had our out of town tryouts in San Francisco, but it was a full-fledged show by then. And so even though we were doing some rewrites, things that just were not working, basically taking things out that didn't work.
So it was like previews.
We weren't really. Even though we were doing some rewrites, things that just were not working, basically taking things out that didn't work.
So it was like previews.
We weren't really workshopping the show. Yeah.
And it was, how did you become involved with this? Because, it was very historical that you did this role, because you were the first out trans woman to originate a lead role on Broadway, if I'm not mistaken. So you made history, or herstory, as they say on Drag Race. And how did you get this audition, and how did you beat out Davey for the role and make Broadway history?
Well,
rub it in, Davey.
I think one of the things that, I hate to burst anyone's bubble, but Shakina Nafak, who is an actress, she's on the new NBC series Connecting. She was also one of the writers on Transparent and featured on Transparent. She had the role of Pythio in I think 2 or 3 of the workshops. So she was like on track to have the role. But then because of Transparent, I'm putting 2 and 2 together. I don't know. But because of some opportunity or some reason, she left and didn't do the rest of it. And so then they started auditioning for Broadway. And so I think that's what created the opening. When I have my manager at the time was involved in the production somehow, had seen it, was friends with Shakina, and told me about this role that Shakina had just left that would be great for me. And this was about a year beforehand, like in 2017, early 2017 something. And then later on, they're like, that role I told you about so long ago? Well, now they're auditioning for it. And we got you an audition. Do you want to do it? And I was in, I was in Europe.
England.
And I was like, I don't know. But my manager was like, it's Broadway. You have to do it.
Right.
And so I was doing all this stuff. And then one of the conditions was, they were like, you're looking really good. We want you to come back for callbacks because we have to see you in the room.
Mm.
And this is and I didn't realize like, you know, and this is and I didn't realize like, you know, Donovan, people had probably flown in. So many of the producers were from LA. And so I was like, honey, I ain't leaving this tour to go to some callback that I might not get.
Right.
No. And my agent was like, you need to do this. And so I was like, okay, fine. So I left this tour, which was plenty of money. That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Drag race tours are quite lucrative. I know that.
Well, leaving and coming back is just,
yeah.
That's plenty of money just to travel to do it.
Yeah.
True, yeah. So I came back and did the audition and did the callback and got to see everybody there and all the producers and everyone. It was the final callback, obviously. And then I left the audition, went and got some Jamba Juice, and they called me and said, you got the role.
Did you have to get right back on the plane and go back to the tour?
No, I had to make the choice because it was like the last
you quit the tour.
Couple of days of the tour. I quit the tour, like we had 2 shows left, and they were coming back on Sunday morning, and that's the day that the tour ended Sunday morning with a show in New York. And my audition was on Sunday morning, but in order for me to get back on audition, I needed to leave Friday night to get back on Saturday to wake up and go on Sunday. So I missed the last 2 or 3 shows, and I was like, can't they just wait 2 or 3 days? You know?
Broadway waits for no one.
And they knew they were going to give it to you. They should have waited. They should have given you the
waited.
Were you a fan, Peppermint, of the Go-Go?
They were going to give it to you. They should have waited. They should have given you the
waited.
Were you a fan, Peppermint, of the Go-Go's music before you were?
Yeah, you know, Belinda and I have quite the little history. I years ago, back in 2012, I was, you know, working as a drag performer, and got a call from my other agent who was like, I got this gig for you. It's with Belinda Carlisle. And I sang backup for her. I guess when she tours, like kind of regionally in the States without the Go-Go's, like as Belinda Carlisle, she uses drag entertainers as the Go-Go's. And so I was like an honorary Go-Go on stage with Belinda for a whole concert, you know, back in like 2012. And we had a great connection and everything was lovely and all that. And then years later, she came up to me. She's like, girl, remember when you were on stage with me? And here we are. This was opening night I obviously had seen her during preparing for the show, but opening night on Broadway, we were able to actually share the stage again because the Go-Go's performed with the cast on opening night. And and that was it was very full circle.
That's so fun. What theater were you in New York?
In New York, we were at the Hudson Theater, which is the oldest standing, like still operating Broadway theater.
Wow. And you live in New York, right?
I live in New York, although right now I'm in Vancouver.
Oh, are you going to stay in Vancouver for the rest of our lives?
Sounds like an all right place to be now.
Sounds like a nicer place to be.
Well, before obviously there's so much to talk about with the album A Girl Like Me, but I know that you recently reunited all of the Head Over Heels cast, including I think some of the Go-Go's on a virtual reunion for charity, right?
Absolutely. We got together. It was earlier in the and during the quarantine, earlier in the pandemic, and we every once in a while have these occasional cast reunion Zoom kind of things anyway. And well, before that we were having game nights, and then obviously we're not getting together. And then we ended up doing
what games were you playing at game night?
You know, like Cards Against Humanity was the big one, Cards Against Disney, which is like Cards Against Humanity.
Okay.
But like the adult Disney version. What else we would play My Favorite Clue. We would play Monopoly sometimes. There's any of them. We would honestly everything. Board games though. And
boards and card games.
And so that's what we would do. But then obviously during COVID, we didn't do that. And we would just have a couple of Zoom meetings, and then Zoom sessions, reunions. And then we said, hey, by this time there had already been several casts who had, put out their Zoom reunions, and the cast of Beautiful did a great one. Like I was kind of like, oh, maybe we don't want to do it. But we did anyway, and we got together. I produced it. I was like, okay, this is what you got to do. Everybody get your ring light and get your camera. And, I was like trying to coach everybody through it. It was a nightmare. But we did it. And watching it watching it back is so much fun.
It's still available.
Just reminds me of how much we love each other.
Aww.
Is it still available to watch?
It's on YouTube?
Yeah, it's on my YouTube.
Okay.
Awesome. We're going to check that out. So also on your YouTube is the video for Best Sex, which just came out. Watched it before.
Ow.
Very, very steamy video. It is the lead single off A Girl Like Me, Letter to My Lovers, which is the album that just came out. And I want to talk about the whole album, but I definitely want to talk about that single because it's my understanding, obviously, all the songs are about a relationship or various relationships and stuff. And this song is basically cut to the chase. Is about a fuck boy, or basically. And I think it's a song that a lot of people unfortunately can relate to. We've all been there. So tell me about what inspired this song, and tell us about making the video, which looked like a lot of fun to make, to be honest.
It did.
It's a sexy video.
Looked like a good
yeah,
time.
yeah, it was a lot of fun to make. Me and my girlfriends, pretty much every Sunday brunch, people sit around and complain about men, I think. That's what me and my girlfriends do. And, it is unique. I think the gigolos of yesteryear do not hold a candle to the fuckery, pardon my French, of the fuckboys of today. They've learned new tricks and games and new manipulations. And
Miss Peppermint, I have a question. Why do you think that is? I would feel that in modern times, what with everyone's private life being entirely public, made so by their own volition,
because you can slide into DMs. To be cagey.
So how
yeah,
you could slide into a DM, but you're still going to get caught on the preview on your phone when like just like it happens in your video. I mean, the guy sitting next to you is dumb enough to be texting another girl while in bed with you. I mean, that's ridiculous. Ridiculous.
No, it's like, it's like the horror movies of today. Where the scarier ones are like the horror, the killer, the murder, the scariness takes place during the day out in the open. And so it's not about being secret anymore. They're just their MO, and I don't mean to attack any lifestyle or I consider myself sex positive, but the MO is themselves being sex positive and poly and being polyamorous and ethically non-monogamous and all of the terms that basically mean I can have sex with anybody I want anytime without any accountability. And the which is no different than what the gigolos of yesteryear wanted to do, but there was probably more stigma around doing it that way. And that's fine. But the thing that's interesting or that sucks is many of these guys will kind of present themselves as, sweet and caring and open and generous and, all the things that you really want to have a respectful encounter. But really they're having sex with you, your friend, your mom, anybody they want. And you find out later, all of you are like, oh my God, you too? And, there's that. And then some of them have like really unredeeming qualities, these fuck boys. And there's only one quality that they seem to possess.
And that is the best sex.
Yeah, that is the best sex.
We're talking about the new album, A Girl Like Me, Letters to My Lovers, that just dropped. And as I think I mentioned, this is part of a trilogy, right? This is part one. We're going to get more music from you, right? So explain to me what the story is and what this album represents, what's coming next, what's the order?
Well, I was in a relationship that lasted about a year, and it also took a year for me to kind of get over it. And I was writing in my diary and going through all the feelings and, healing. That eventually I decided to put the diary to music. We have so many songs that basically cover the entire relationship, the beginning, the middle, and the end of the relationship. And we ended up with like 16 or 17 songs, which is way too much for one album. I'm like, I don't want people to be like cursing me out. And so we decided to break up those songs and put them in order from beginning, middle, and end of the relationship. And we're going to release them over the course of a year, which is how long it took me to experience this relationship. And so I figured, let's just take the listener on a year-long journey.
Wow, that's so interesting. So it is in fact linear. That was the question I was going to ask. And what we're hearing on this first EP, which is the first third of a greater work, this deals with one love interest. It's singular.
The beginning, it does. Well, it mostly deals with the beginning of the relationship, and so I was a jaded girl out there in these single streets. And I was experiencing, casual encounters after another, not to my own, that wasn't necessarily my choice. But at the end of the string of casual encounters, I was pretty much convinced that love wasn't real and that no one will ever have a relationship again. And,
same.
Yeah, the normal.
I've been there, am there.
Yeah.
But go on. About me.
That was my modus operandi when I was I had a crush on a coworker.
Oh, wow.
I won't say exactly what, but I had a crush on a coworker.
Another drag performer?
Definitely not.
Okay.
But that would be an interesting twist. Yeah, they say, never mind, I won't even say.
No, I know. There's a thing where a lot of drag queens don't like to date other drag queens.
Yeah, they don't. It's called kai-kai, and many drag queens are not like, or don't like it. And then some do. I think it's cool, whatever, but that's not my cup of tea.
Okay.
And so it was not another drag performer. Okay. Although they have done drag before, so you can figure that one out. But anyway, I was crushing on them, and long story short, they rejected me, and I was in a mental, emotional tailspin, as one does on a Friday evening, on their way to a birthday party, and everything went to shambles. I wrong address and went to another place, and it was like the worst night set in motion by Domino's. Not Domino's Pizza, like Domino's. You know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And so then I decided that I wanted to get on this app and swipe, and first person who swipes is going to have their lucky night. And I matched with someone, and he was supposed to come out. He was like late, of course. I'm like, oh my God, more shenanigans from men. And he was late, and then when he was late, he gave me some story about his landlady having a raccoon that he needed to go catch. I'm like, oh, a likely story.
I don't know, Peppermint. That seems pretty specific.
Very creative, at least. I'll give him that.
Well, whatever. I was like, don't leave the raccoon and get over here. Here. And so I was already resentful when he got to there, and then he got into the house. And I was like, okay, you're fine, but
okay.
You
worth the wait.
Better. Yeah. So let's get this going so you can get back to that raccoon. And so it was the best hookup that I had. And afterwards, the mode that I was in is very much, oh, that was great sex. Just get the hell out of my house. But he was like, no, let's talk. Let's cuddle. Let's just talk all night. And I was like, short circuit, And
what did he want to talk about? Raccoons?
Maybe he was disgusted.
He was invested and interested in what I thought and felt about things, which is
okay.
unusual
nice.
for men.
And this and this
Very, yeah.
and this is the best sex, the raccoon story.
This is part of the best sex, but
Okay.
the best sex really is attributed to all the other guys that give you great sex but have nothing else to offer.
But this hookup ended up being the relationship. It was not just a hookup.
Get out.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
we were together for a year.
Come on.
who said love is dead?
Truth.
Well, maybe it is. I don't know,
believe
because
you.
I guess
That
it
is
didn't work
wild.
out. But what I think is interesting is doesn't this album also feature a cover of Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow, which is funny. My mom has told me my mom was I think a teenager when that song came out, and she said when it came out at that time, it was scandalous because it was like a hookup song. It was a coded hookup song, basically. And it was scandalous at that time. And then you put your twist on it. And I'm curious what made you, it's a Carole King co-pen song. What made you want to do that song?
Well, I think the lyrics really do speak for themselves. And I'm sure that they were, the song was a hit, you know what I mean? So like, it's Carole King. It was the Shirelles' biggest hit. It was a major thing. And obviously it's been covered many times since then. But I think it's all the covers of it that I've heard by major artists were, in the 70s and 80s, between the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I think the lyrics like you said, it couldn't be more relevant. It's a hookup song, and this is like the age of the hookup culture, right? And so it's extremely relevant now. I think for anyone who is an adult who has engaged in casual sex, the thought has crossed your mind. What's this? This is nice now, but what's this going to be tomorrow? A lot of people I'm sure people think about that. And for queer people, growing up in this country, if you're an adult of adult age and you're queer and you're dating in this country, we didn't grow up with look, most people don't grow up with healthy tools on relationships, but queer people definitely didn't grow up with healthy tools on relationships and dating each other, especially trans people. And so that is, all of that fuckery I talked about from the boys, and coupled with sort of stigma, people really looking at the partners of trans people as something weird, or like if I'm dating a guy, most of the society is going to say, oh, he's gay. Gay, and that's not true, but that's what the stigma is. And so there's all of this stigma that really affects most relationships can't withstand that kind of negativity. And so it makes it even more unlikely. The dating pool for many trans women that I know is extremely small. Sex with the same people over and over again because there's nobody else.
I read a quote in one of your interviews where you said that this album is I'm reading the quote, a fantasy album of love songs sung by a trans woman in a way that speaks directly to trans women. So I'm curious, I feel this album is very innovative and groundbreaking in that way. Like, tell me about that and the point of view that you and the audience that you're singing to.
Yeah, look, music, I think everyone, music is one of the great universal languages, and everyone feels it. It's something that I think will be around as long as there are humans to listen and make music. And so it's for as long as we've had music and as long as queer people have been around, there's a surprising lack of queer artists who are out and open and singing about their love, their queerness, whatever, in their music. There's certainly a lot of celebrities and legendary singers and songwriters who we now know are queer, but in the height of their career weren't, and they weren't writing about it. If they were, it was coded, kind of just like how you said with the Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow, but in a different way. And so I think would have been potentially life-saving for me. Not that I've lost my life, obviously, but it would have really altered the course of my life had I been able to hear and see songs, music, television, movies featuring Black trans women. I didn't know any other Black trans women until I'm an adult, until recently. And so that would have been just life-changing for me. And so I really wanted to be able to put something out there that young trans girls could listen to and feel good about, and know that yes, it could be tough, but you are deserving of love. You're deserving of all of your dreams, and that you are lovable, and that regardless of what society says when they're trying to remove you from the bathrooms and the military and sports, all this stuff is this year that the Trump administration has made motions in court to try to get rid of, making it legal for you to be fired from your job. All of this is in the past few months. Getting rid of your health care. You are worthy of love, and people are attracted to you for who you are. And you have the same capacity to give love and contribute to society as everyone else. And we need proof of that. And so I wanted to make a record of it.
Well, you've been very innovative. Like I said, the role you originated on Broadway, this album, but also you were the first out trans contestant to be cast on RuPaul's Drag Race. There's been some others as well that, like Carmen Carrera and such, but like you were out from the beginning. You didn't come out in the middle of the show or after the show, but straight from when you first walked into the workroom. So that was groundbreaking. And I'm curious to get your thoughts, because I believe that RuPaul has changed his tune. But, a few years ago, he said things about trans contestants on the show, how he thought they might have like some kind of unfair advantage, and it maybe wasn't fair to have them on the show. I think that was, I don't remember if that was before or after you were. I think it might have been after you were on the show. But he definitely got in hot water for that, and I think he may have backtracked on that. But what are your thoughts about that whole controversy?
Well, there was people have definitely never skimped on the opportunity to ask RuPaul about having trans contestants on the show. I remember one article, one story in The Guardian where I was specifically invoked talking about my body and surgeries that I may or may not have had, and whether I was passable or not, and convincing, not in those exact words, but and that was really hurtful. I certainly don't enjoy being talked about, having my transness and my identity used in that way. And so I thought that was unfortunate. I definitely think it is and was and will continue to be a missed opportunity for all television shows to not have more diversity and inclusion. And that, of course, includes trans women and trans men and non-binary people. If you don't have these people, not that we're not looking for tokenism, but if you don't work to have inclusion of different people on your show, what are you doing?
I would love to go back. You've been doing this for a while, and I know you've been like a real fixture of like the New York club scene. How did you first get into drag and performing, and like what memories was it the New York club scene that you first started performing in, or was it before that?
It was before that. I moved to New York City to go to college. And so by that time I had already gone out in drag and done drag, maybe worked once or twice in drag. I first kind of got my start in the Wilmington, Delaware scene, which isn't much, and also the Philadelphia club scene, and going to raves. And remember those? Mm-hmm. And those were a lot of fun. Some of my favorite ones to go to were like Boo and Let Freedom Ring. Anyway,
that's in Philly.
Yeah. Boo and Let Freedom Ring were in Philly. I think they ended up moving some of them to. I think they ended up moving. Boo was the Halloween one. That was my favorite because the Halloween more people are dressed. And so I went to Boo and Boo 2. And the point is, I used to go to the raves before I came to the New York City club scene. Mm-hmm. That was in the late 90s. And so we didn't really need raves in New York because all the clubs were like doing their thing. So my first trip to New York, I came with a girlfriend of mine, co-worker. We worked selling theater tickets, subscriptions at the Delaware Opera House. And we took a Peter Pan bus to New York City and got on the bus not in drag, and then got off the bus in drag. And we just walked the streets. We didn't have any money. We just walked the streets. Honey.
Wow.
This
is a movie.
You put it together in the bus?
You got dragged up in the bus?
Oh, yes, darling.
That's a drag race challenge.
I mean, it would be a 2-hour ride. It wasn't like a city bus. It was a 2-hour drive. So we did our makeup on the bus. And
you got space?
Awesome.
Wow.
We got everything, darling. We were professionals.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting RuPaul's Drag Race challenge if they made people do
it. Would. Oh, yeah. I can't comment on how we looked, but we did it.
I mean, I have almost gone blind trying to put makeup on in a moving
you gotta
vehicle.
be careful. Don't try this at home.
It's not easy. But we were determined, you know what I mean?
It's dangerous.
And so we walked the streets for 14 hours. We had little adventures. We, we got invited to house parties. We had no money. We did not go to a single bar or club. We just walked the streets. And we got to see pimps and sex workers and everybody, on the street. And that was all we needed. And that was what I knew I need. I was like, this is for me.
Where did Peter Pan drop you, Miss Peppermint? Where?
At Port Authority, 42nd Street, Times Square.
Wow.
Right in the heart of it. Damn. Right in the heart.
So were you part of like Squeeze Box and like that scene when John Cameron was there?
I've been to Squeeze Box, but I was not really a part of the scene. Although I do know Johnny and rest in peace Chi Chi very well. I did Mother and Click and Drag and a lot of their parties. So I'm well acquainted with the New York sort of like pansexual, bisexual rock and roll scene.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever go to Motherfucker?
I was going to say, I hosted Motherfucker. I was the second host of Motherfucker for years. Mistress Formica was the original host and MC of Motherfucker. And then after, I was the host for ever until it closed.
Well, we might have met before when I didn't look like I lived in a cave.
we may have met. I was the MC and host of Motherfucker from, I want to say, I don't know, 2000. I mean, it closed in, I want to say 2009 or
it went that long.
I don't remember when it closed.
Were you friends with Theo?
Yeah, of course I know Theo Kogan, and we have ties in Delaware because her husband, who was in the Toilet Boys, is from Delaware, at Wilmington as well. And so Theo and I worked with Theo and Michael T. Yeah, who were part of the Motherfucker crew. Mm-hmm. There were 5 of them. Well, anyway, the point is, I worked with Theo and Michael T. at a weekly sort of version of Motherfucker called Rated X The Panty Party. And I was also the host and MC of that.
And did you perform at those, like in drag, or did you just sort of MC?
All of them. Oh yeah, I was in drag, honey. I was very comfortable. I came to New York for college. I was going out on the weekends. I was originally working at the Tunnel nightclub and then a lot of the other nightclubs in New York. And I was earning like $50 a week as the door rope girl. And then I ended up getting inside and doing shows every week, being part of the cast of girls that would come out. And so I was doing that for years and then ended up working with Michael T. at Motherfucker. And I worked also at Lips Restaurant. It's a drag restaurant. It's sort of a national franchise. Mm-hmm. And so that was I was just basically doing that and working at said yes to everything for a good 10 years, from like 2000 until 2010, 11, 12, when I started getting my own shows. Well, I got my own show in 2005, but I started getting my own shows, and 2008, I started traveling. And so I was really, Motherfucker, I think closed around 2007 or 8 or 9.
It seemed like it didn't
Yeah, because I started traveling internationally around 2008.
Were you?
Anyway, I did all that and had worked in drag pretty much everywhere, and I traveled to Europe and Australia and Amsterdam and all these places. And then in 2012, you know, things started to dry up when RuPaul's Drag Race became really popular.
Dry
So
up.
that's
You mean the
in my underwear? Scene? No, just kidding.
It was that bad, huh?
What happened?
Dry
what
up
do you mean, like
in the work world?
Oh, interesting. Why is that? Because drag was becoming more mainstream, or
Drag race was becoming more mainstream, and then, you know, one of the things that was really interesting is anybody that was going out to any gay pride celebration or any pride celebration in the early to mid 2000s remembers when the guests of the evening, the guest of honor was Snooki or Tan Mom or someone from some reality show, and I remember the gays were not having that, but they were like, whatever. Paris Hilton, she was like the big celebrity. Like you got these were people who had absolutely no tie really to the queer community as far as we knew. And so I think the queer community and people in gay bars were sort of really not desperate, but just really excited to have their own celebrities. And so when Drag Race came out, these club promoters could even be more excited to finally book TV stars that everyone knew that would draw a crowd that were actually belonged in that club.
I'm actually curious. I've asked this of some other people who have sort of the background of working in the clubs or whatever. I hosted a panel at DragCon a couple years ago that was called Seasoned Queens, that had like well, I had James St. James on it, but also had like Tempest du Jour and people like that on it. And Miss Kasha Davis was on that one. But I'm curious, people have different schools of thought. Some people think it's great that RuPaul's Drag Race, which has won a whole bunch of Emmys now and created all these stars, has, you know, opened all these doors and mainstream drag, and it's this big convention now in all of the industry. But other people see a downside to it, and they think, you know, the mainstreaming of drag through Drag Race has made it like a little less exciting, a little too vanilla, a little too safe, a little, you know, like they miss the edge, the sleaziness from the club scene, and the humor that came now that doesn't always translate now on TV. If you try to, you know, it's lost its edge. What is your stance on that?
It has lost its edge. It has. I mean, look, I remember a time when in New York, you know, you were going to go out, and I did all kinds of things that I know are probably illegal today. And we, you know, it was so much fun. You would go out in New York City and you didn't know if you were going to go to the club. You didn't know if you were going to meet somebody and have sex or get killed. And you actually were okay with it. So that was fun. But those were also times when we didn't have the right as queer people and as LGBT people to get married, when it was legal to fire us from our day jobs, when, you know, there were so many things that were wrong with that time that we were seeing the best in a little crumb. And so I think that the world has changed, and it has changed for the better and worse, like you said. And so I think that translates to things like Drag Race too. It's going to be impossible for us to be the disrespectful house guest. We can't go into everyone's house and be like, fuck you, this is we hate you, straight people. Like, we can't do that. Like, you know, one of the things I always say is, like, you know, if we want equality, whatever it means, whatever the thing that we're trying to get, whether for trans people it's equal access to like the bathroom or healthcare, or for lesbian and bi and gay people, cisgender people, that it's marriage equality. That was the big issue of, you know, several years ago. If we want equality and we want them to allow us into their institutions, their places, their institution of marriage, whatever they're gatekeeping from us, then we kind of have to let them into ours too, which means there's going to be straight girls in the gay bar. There's going to be people at DragCon who like, you're like, why is this accountant looking person at DragCon? It just is what it is. That's what equality is. Equality is boring, but you have a better life because of it.
I want a t-shirt that says that. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Might be misperceived if it's just on a t-shirt.
Yeah, well,
you might want to.
I'll have to rethink
Although
it.
I appreciate the quote and the sentiment very much.
No, the whole thing, not just equality is boring, the part, but we have to have. Anyway, we'll take that conversation offline. But we were talking before about the representation on television. I want to know about the series you're doing, Translation, the Roundtable Talk series that actually has a lot of other trans contestants from RuPaul's Drag Race. That talk about, some of the issues we're talking about now. Can you tell me about that series and how people can check it out?
Yeah, it's basically like, the transgender version of VO. And it's a roundtable talk show where morning show style, where we talk about issues of the day through like a trans lens, which again is something that you can't just turn on and find on any channel. Mm-hmm. But you can find it on Out TV. They have picked us up for a second season. I don't know if I should say that, but I'm saying it.
Awesome. Breaking news.
Congratulations. That's fantastic.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. We're in pre-production for that. Obviously, COVID and everything is something to consider. Mm-hmm. But it's myself, Carmen Carrera, Jiggly Caliente, and Sonique, who are the co-hosts on the show. And it's been great filming with them for our first season, and I'm excited to get back to the table. I think the first time we felt like we had to cover so much, and it was kind of, I think this time around we're going to try to really tackle, even just go a little grittier with the okay, sorry.
Speaking of gritty, perfect soundtrack.
Yes, we hear the sirens. It's perfect timing.
The window is closed, believe it or not. I don't know. I must live next to a fire station. Anyway, we're going to get grittier and kind of just really go in now that we know people appreciate the show. And so it's exciting.
I'm also curious, a lot of people, I'm sure you've been asked this before, but a lot of people would really like you to come back to Drag Race as an all-star for All Stars 6, I guess it would be, because your season, your regular season of Drag Race, season 9, was a very fruitful season. Obviously, when we look at the top 4, Sasha Velour won, but Shea Coulee just won All Stars 5, and then before that, Trinity the Tuck won All Stars 4. So a lot of people probably want, the quadruple win and get you back. I'm surprised. Not only am I surprised you haven't competed on the show, but on All Stars 5, and they brought all these lip sync assassins to battle the contestants. It's like, you were the lip sync assassin of your season. Like, why haven't you been on All Stars yet? Is it because you don't want to do it, or is there just not been an opportunity?
I'd say it's mostly scheduling. There hasn't really been an opportunity. If they asked me to go back and compete, I absolutely would do it. I'm very grateful that while I'm not on the show, I've been able to still pay my bills and do other things. The year that they filmed season 5 of All Stars, I was featured on 3 shows, Pose, Deputy on Fox, and God Friended Me. And so it was nice to be able to kind of get my feet wet in a different realm and do some network television. And it'd be great to go back to either any of those things. Of course, I want to go back to Drag Race if they invite me back. They did invite me back once before. They're probably over me saying this, but they actually asked me to go back and do All Stars 4. But it was while I was on Broadway, and I wasn't going to leave Broadway to go and do it. And so, yeah, maybe they'll ask me again. There certainly is pressure because now our season 9 is one of the most winningest seasons. And if I do, it is the most winningest season so far. And so the pressure's on.
It was such a great season, and it was kind of also a season that started the trend that they've had since with Christina Aguilera and Miley and Nicki Minaj of having
Coming into the room, yeah.
yeah. So
They didn't do that.
Lady Gaga was the mentor on your season premiere and on Untucked, the after show. Like, not she didn't just come in and say like, "Hi, girls." She like really sat down with you guys and was into it.
Honey, not only did she sit down with us and like, you know, really have an exchange with us, she brought notes and critiques. She brought a piece of criticism and a piece of advice or critique for each of us. Every single one of us, she went down the line. She wrote everyone's name and wrote one good thing and one thing that we could improve. And she talked about it with each of us at length. We were in there for like 2 hours.
Wow.
Of course, they edited it down. And they even came in, were like, you know, you need to leave the girls. And she's like, actually, no, I'm going to stay here and we need to do this. And it was like, oh, she actually is like really wants to connect with us. I don't know what the experience is like with the other queen. Obviously, I wasn't there with the other seasons who since followed, but that was, she obviously started a trend. And she was so prepared and gracious. And the cool thing about that experience was that was our premiere episode, as you said, and they weren't eliminating anyone on that episode because we'd all kind of really did our tribute of Lady Gaga. And so it was just, the engagement was just like up really high, especially for a first episode for us. It was also the first year that Drag Race was on VH1. It was the Drag Race had, I think, won its first Emmy in our season. And so there was a lot of highs from that season. I think it was a really good season.
Do you remember what Lady Gaga's things she wrote down for you were?
Yeah. She loved my energy and loved, just, she could tell that, she said that she could tell that my joy was coming through. And she thought that the outfit was a knockout. I did her take on David Bowie when she was on the 2016 2016 Grammy carpet. And so that's the look I did. And we did our best. It was designed by designer and club kid named Delicia, who also designed my Peppermint club kid outfit, which was like a peppermint red and white stripe. Anyway, amazing. So Gaga, her critique was that those were not the earrings that she was wearing, and that she wanted to see more attention to detail from
Did you or any
fair?
Did you or any of the cast have a pre-existing relationship with Gaga? I know it. I don't know this for sure, but I believe she professes to have come up in the scene in New York. Did any of the others?
She did. I probably would have been the most likely to have, to be honest with you, but
you never encountered her in the
certainly
wild.
the oldest from New York.
I'm just curious, but we do have to wrap this up, but before we do, I'm just curious, for people who didn't watch that episode, the stunt she pulled was she walked in full drag into the workroom, and it was supposed to be that people thought she was a contestant, and then they realized it's actually, you know, a contestant dressed as Gaga, and then they realized it's actually Gaga. Were you wise, or were you really surprised, or did you know it was her?
I didn't know it was her until she spoke. And then I was like, oh, come on. Who is this? And like, I had 3 thoughts. I was like, whoa, whoever this is, they're winning. Second of all, I think this person is a cis woman, or at least assigned female at birth, because there's something going on. It doesn't seem like the conventional drag queen. And then I was like, okay, that voice, no impersonator who looks like that also has Gaga's voice. You would not be blessed with that. And so then I eventually, like right before the other girl, no one ever said it. She just said what she said and then waited. And so the girls were kind of like, and so one by one, girls were getting it. And I did get it kind of early on, but I was still in shock.
It was a great, great moment on TV, as was your entire season, as was when you were on Saturday Night Live, Pose, God Friended Me, the translation show that's out now. You're a very busy woman. The album, A Girl Like Me, Letters to My Lovers, is out now. When will we expect parts 2 and 3?
2 is coming in the new year, probably in early spring, and then summer will be for 3.
Awesome. Well, that's something to look forward to. It was lovely to chat with you. We're so excited you could join the show. Thank you so much, Peppermint.
My pleasure.